The composition we are talking about is one of those artistic works that are considered cult and famous all over the world. People recognize such songs from the first chord. The meanings of the song Ram Jam, Black Betty is really interesting to explore. The story of creation of this composition goes back to ancient times. Credits for this track include Huddy William Ledbetter and Traditional. For the first time it was mentioned much earlier. There is evidence that references to Black Betty were discovered in one of the old marching songs of British soldiers in 18th century. There are many recorded versions of Black Betty. In 1977, the rock and roll band Ram Jam, with help P.F. Bill Bartlett included, re-released an edited version of the Starstruck recording with producers Jerry Casenetz and Jeffrey Katz under Epic Records. Earlier Bill Bartlett was a guitarist of bands Starstruck and Lemon Pipers. The song had a great success, it conquered many charts, was loved by people all over the world. Some achievements of the song: 18th place on the singles charts in the US, top 10 of Australia and the UK. The composition was included on the Negro Sinful Songs album released by Leadbelly in 1939 and on the debut album Ram Jam by Ram Jam in 1977. It is difficult to establish the original source of the artwork now, but the fact is that the members of the Ram Jam band were not the direct authors of the artwork. Of course, this track became the most famous in the entire short creative period of the team. It may seem that Black Betty is a lady, but in fact the song is very far from a romantic mood. There are different versions of the meaning of the song, they will be discussed a little later. When you first hear the name of this song, it seems obvious that Betty is an animated, real woman. But everything is not as simple as it seems at first glance, and this is the beauty of the art of music. There are many variations of the meaning of song title, that main hero is a firearm, namely a black-handled musket, or that Black Betty is a bottle of Scotch whiskey. There is also an opinion that Black Betty is an out for punishing convicts. Let's take a closer look at several versions of the meaning of the song name. Weapon. There is an opinion that the song originated from an 18th century combat cadenza about a flintlock gun with black stock paint. The words Bam Bar Lam refers to the sounds of gunshots. From the early 18th century, the standard musket had a walnut stock and was therefore known to the British Army, at least by 1785, as the Brown Bess. There is also an opinion that Black Betty is a cannonball. Alcohol or drugs. David Hackett Fisher wrote a book Albion's Seed, 4 British Folkways in America, and there he said that Black Betty was a name for a whiskey bottle in the fringes of northern England, southern Scotland and later some areas of the USA. In January 1736, Benjamin Franklin, that person depicted on the $100 bill, published in the Pennsylvania Gazette the Drinker's Dictionary, offering more than 200 drunken circle phrases. One of them is "He kissed Black Betty," which means that he got drunk. Other sources in the USA refer to Black Betty as a bottle of not whiskey, but liquor. Its color is closer to black. There is also an opinion that Black Betty is a stimulant drug in pills or even hard drugs, heroin. Knout. The opinion that Black Betty is a knout was expressed by musicologist John Avery Lomax. He and his son Alan Lomax's 1934 book American Ballads and Folk Songs says about the origins of Black Betty: Black Betty is not another Frankie and not a doppelganger that a man can moan about in his blues. She is a knout that was and is used in some southern convicts. Convicted at Durrington Farm in Texas, where, by the way, the whipping was virtually discontinued. The next song made fun of Black Betty and mimicked her conversation. Vehicles. Robert V. Wells, the Chorn C. H. Winters Professor of History and Social Sciences at Union College, in Life Flows On in Endless Song, Folk Songs and American History, writes, back in the 60s, however, the car carrying people to prison was named Black Betty. Later versions represented Black Betty as various vehicles, including a motorcycle and a hot rod. Woman. The most logical and most literal understanding and explaining of the title is that Black Betty is still the woman with whom the author was in love. Since the text that Black Betty had a baby is not entirely logical when it comes to alcohol or vehicles. In one of the telephone interviews, Bill Bartlett says that his personal understanding is that the legendary Black Betty is actually dedicated to Betty Page, a famous American fashion model who starred in 1950 to 1957, pin-up queen. Betty Page was kind of personal inspiration of Bill Bartlett. This Ram Jam song is ambiguous. Each listener, getting acquainted with the text, can think about something of his own, present his own interpretations. For example, due to the straightforward interpretation of Black Betty like a black woman, the song was subject of many bans. In 2006, the New Hampshire University was banned from playing Ram Jam's Black Betty at the UNH hockey game. Marty Scarano, athletic director of university, explained the reason for his decision: "Our university is never going to stand for something that offends any segment of society." The racist aspect has generally become controversial for this song. But, if you think a little more about it, the accusations of racism are not only baseless, but also absurd. The song doesn't say anything bad about black people, even if Betty is actually a black woman. On the contrary, the heroine is perceived positively and attractively. And racism is a negative phenomenon. There is no negativity in the song, even if you look at how Ram Jam performs it, incendiary and joyful. You can understand Black Betty also as a song about the Queen of Spades, and just about a brunette woman. Perhaps she was black or dark in a figurative sense, like in her soul. In the song, by and large, nothing specific is sung. Basically, it consists of exclamations and pronouns whoa, oh yeah and something like that. But from the context, we understand that Black Betty is something powerful, strong, and personifies something that inspires the author in the strongest way, which struck him so much that he dedicated a song to it. The summary is as follows: the author refers to Black Betty, who gave birth to a child and became distraught. Of course, the first thing that comes to mind is that this woman lost her child, but perhaps we are talking about a bullet that flew out of a musket. The song also says that Black Betty is always ready and is from Birmingham, Alabama. Legend says this song belongs to Betty, who was something of a local legend among bargoers in the early 40s. She was a blues enthusiast and performed throughout Alabama under the name Black Betty. The lyrics of the song are very simple, one might say, primitive. At the same time, the song is very rhythmic, which is why African American workers just fell in love with it. Oppressed African Americans, who were often engaged in grueling, dull work, sang certain songs such as Black Betty to add rhythm to the work and thus do said work more efficiently. Music can really stick in your head, and Black Betty is just one of those sticky artworks that you involuntarily sing for a long time, only once you hear it. And finally, in the words whoa, Black Betty, babalum sound. Babalum can be interpreted as the sounds of gunfire. And it can also be like pouring whiskey, knocking glasses against each other, or even the sounds of intimate entertainment. Who likes what? There is another realistic interpretation of this sound combination. Perhaps bambalam is an existing slang referring to a person from Birmingham, Alabama. You can discuss the meaning of the song for a long time, but there are facts associated with it that are undeniable. And there are many such facts. In the late 1800s, this track became the working anthem of the Afghan American prisoners. The length of the song is 2 minutes 32 seconds, the album version lasts much longer, 3 minutes 57 seconds. The first recording of Black Betty was made in 1933 by music scientists John and Alan Lomax. The performer was the prisoner James Baker, nicknamed the Iron Head. Thus, the Ram Jam work can be considered a cover. Previously, cover versions of this legendary song have already been created, for example, by the band Starstruck. Legendary song can be discovered, even in two variations. In the 2005 movie The Dukes of Hazzard, the Ram Jam version is included in the album of soundtracks. World figure skating title holder Jay Fernandez demonstrated his program to the Ram Jam version of Black Betty in the season 2014-15 as he won his third European title and his first world title championship golden medal. The artwork can be heard in some levels of video games, like Rayman Legends in 2013. Ben Lybrand, well-known Dutch DJ, in 1989 made a remix of this song as a Rough and Ready remix. It had a success, reaching number 13 in the United Kingdom as well as charting in some other countries. Ted Demme used this composition as the soundtrack for his movie Blow. This song also featured in John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson's Basic. You could hear all sorts of variations of this song anywhere, in video games, at hockey games, performed by the kid from the next apartment who is learning to play the electric guitar at 3 a.m. Black Betty is a true rock classic, a hit with a long history, loved by many people passionate about music. So, Black Betty song means what you want it to mean. It is no longer possible to ask the authors about its meaning, and even during their lifetime they did not explain it. And this is the beauty of music, in the freedom of interpretation. As Bill Bartlett said, main thing in music is to have a good experience listening to it, and the search for meaning.